You're sitting right here?
It was small.
Those are my buck sheds.
Those are sheds from your buck?
I had my buck back.
These are all the ones I found this year. Besides this one, because this is off the buck. It'll be our number one next year.
This is that 10.
It's the 10 2 years ago.
Why does this look so familiar?
Stanky.
That's Stanky Jr.
Yeah.
That's the year we passed him every time. Like, he got the continual pass when he was wearing this. And embarrassingly, it sat in the woods for 2 years.
Because we couldn't find it because we suck.
I couldn't find it.
Don't worry about a little dab of blood on here on the table.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's for my dough.
There's big sheds in the house.
Is there any sheds in the house?
There's a Freak Daddy shed in there.
Yeah, we're gonna need that. Right there. That's probably the two best continual match sets I've
Bastard,
had.
huh?
It's the bastard.
Yeah, didn't he?
Disappeared forever.
Did.
This is off of. We got this guy. This is the Gimp, and there's like 5 more up there. So this is the deer that we had the most sheds off of ever. I'll just pull one down. We found 6 off of him.
See those?
What else do we need to bring down for the masses to find? Yeah, I guess all the Freak Daddy sheds are inside. Here's my second biggest. That was a field find. I was laying in a field just like this, looked like a stick.
Where's my only shed at? It's a pretty nice shed.
Is that Freak Daddy?
No, that's Elk Jr. I don't know what else I want to pull down for now. We have 4 sheds off this buck too. Got killed by a neighbor. That's great.
A moose paddle.
Moose paddle. I gotta go get Freak Daddy shit.
The guys gonna go.
All right, guys.
$40.
One day,
Same tree.
same tree.
Oh my god, I'm so
Woo!
Holy shit! Get a shot of these.
2 farms this year. Number 1 is done.
Did you say bye, Kevin?
I did. I already did. Bye, Kevin. Bye, Kevin. Bye, Kevin.
Smoked it, buddy. Look at that. You destroyed it.
Joey takes
The shop is closing up.
Make sure he takes all his right antlers. All right, guys. Welcome to the Deer Shop Podcast, episode 30. Brought to you by Siman Brothers Outdoors and the Leaky John Boat Company. As always, please leave a review, comment, whatever app you're listening on. YouTube, Spotify, Apple. It really helps us out. Today, we are talking about all things shed hunting. It's mid-February here. It's the very beginning of what we would call shed season, even though a lot of people have been out and finding bone. If you've ever watched our podcast on YouTube, which would be the best way to listen or watch to this one, you've seen our shed wall back here behind me. We got a bunch of them pulled down right now. This is only just a small piece of our collection. I got sheds spread out through. There's some at other people's houses and all over the place. There's sheds, but this is the bulk of our collection from either this farm or like public land, I would say, or sheds that mean something to us.
And we're doing a shed hunting podcast today because we got a snowstorm last night.
Yeah,
So-
I would probably be out looking if it wasn't for that snowstorm, but there's no way we can shed hunt right now. So it's a perfect day to record a couple podcasts.
And we're going to talk about our strategies for finding these sheds on our small pieces of property. And
Yeah.
there's definitely something that we're going to talk about that doesn't get talked about a lot with shed hunting, and I'll hit on that when the time comes.
This is going to be another one of those podcasts where you're going to listen to me talk a lot.
Yeah.
Because out of all the stuff we do, out of everything that we do here at Siman Brothers Outdoors with our friends and everything, this is the only thing where I'm the best at it. Like, I'm not the best deer hunter.
He is the best at shed hunting.
Not the best turkey hunter. Maybe the second best, but definitely not the best turkey hunter. I think Dylan might get close to both of those titles, but I am the best shed hunter. So one thing I'm good at. So I'm going to do a lot of the talking, but.
And for the people listening around the table, it's Caleb, Ethan. We're joined by Dylan, and then myself, Isaac, is here.
Isaiah.
Just because if they're listening, they can't see us.
Yeah. I'm going to get right into the meat and potatoes of tips and strategies and stuff at first, and then we'll kind of break down and talk about some of our history with it, but shed hunting has definitely gained popularity here in the Midwest in the last 10 years or so, I'd say. Maybe even a little bit longer than that. You go back a little bit farther, people would pick up antlers mostly when they're turkey hunting or farming, get out of the fields and stuff.
End up in a tire.
Yeah, it wasn't something that people focused on. It was kind of a bigger deal out west. I know a lot of people were shed hunting out west before they were over on this side of the country because antler had value, and
They still have a lot
Yeah.
of value. I think a full-grown 6x6 elk antler is worth like $100.
yeah. And back in the day, I mean, guys were picking. This kind of went back to when trapping was still a big thing too. I mean, antlers were valuable, and there wasn't as much of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we're history building here, and these are personal to us. Out west, guys were just picking them up, selling them. It was a big market. There's all these ranches and ranges, and it became so involved that they started having regulations. So shed hunting's regulated out
there's
west
shed hunting seasons out there.
with rules and time of year.
And some of the places we hunt, I'm not sure of the states, we're not allowed to pick them up when we're hunting because it's not in the shed hunting season.
I'm picking them up.
You would be more.
Well, we had to look up. Dylan found that elk shed in Montana this year. We had to look up whether it was legal or not for us to.
I just wasn't
Take
going to
it.
tell anyone.
Yes, like.
But that was a cool antler.
Right. So when it comes to shed hunting, this is something that we're doing all times of year. Obviously, I'm talking about shed season here in Ohio. It's not an official season, but when the antlers start falling off, you got 2 months before the squirrels get to them and they start to ruin them.
Sometimes.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But they have found a bunch of sheds out west. Isaac and Dylan have. Isaac's found a couple elk and a moose.
Found 3 elk sheds, a moose shed, and then quite a few mule deer antlers. Just nothing big on the mule deer
little
side.
guys.
Yeah, we actually don't
Nothing
have
to
any.
save. I think I brought one home because it wasn't
Right.
chalky and it got
I threw
thrown
them
to the
out.
dogs or something.
I don't. We used to pick up every antler we find. Now I don't pick up chalk anymore.
If they're chalky, if they're super tore
Yeah.
up, just leave them.
We've started to leave the chalk. I have a box of chalk in my house. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Probably throw them away because they're not good for dogs.
There's literally zero use.
Yeah, there's nothing. They're ugly. There's no use for dogs. There's no point in having them. So I should give them back to the squirrels. Donate them back to nature.
Little
But,
calcium.
Give them something to chew on instead of new ones.
Yeah.
I have written down here the 2 types of shed hunting. There's actually 3 that I utilize. The first one we want to talk about is the sprint, and we do this a lot as a group. It's good for groups, and it's kind of the way you have to do it when you have multiple guys. The sprint is we have an hour or 2, or even maybe more, but we got to check a couple different farms, or we got to check a couple different areas. So we're just going to go out there, and everyone just kind of bombs into the woods together, follows trails, and goes to all the obvious spots.
Yeah, and we take 2 or 3 guys, and we kind of walk through the woods following each other. So sometimes you're not in the best spot to look for the most antlers because you're trying to stay in a group.
Yeah,
Not just
and you're
wandering the
literally
whole woods.
meandering every trail,
And sometimes
walking
that's
across
where they're
the
at, though.
field. Yeah,
Like
we
in the
and we
most
find
random spots ever.
we find lots that way.
Yeah.
And we find a lot of sheds.
But
that
it
way.
makes you think too. Is when you're not doing that during or when you're looking for sheds, but you're doing it during turkey season, you find it just in a weird spot.
Yeah.
Probably what you should try doing when you're actually shed hunting.
Yeah. Yep.
So I usually stay to trails and stuff.
Yep. We do this quite often. We have like our shed rally days and stuff like that, where we just go farm to farm to farm and blast it and just hit all the obvious spots or the spots where we have found sheds in the past, stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. Like I say, you can throw a couple beers in your pocket, just walk. You bring a dog. Usually, we'll have a dog with us, and we'll just spend time in the woods. You're marking stuff as you go, but it's not as detailed. You're not focused looking, and you're not scouting. You're just kind of looking for antlers only. And then the second type I have is the focus.
Which that's probably the way we found the most antlers. I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah, I would say 50-50. So the second one I want to talk about is the focused. The focused shed hunt is the 1 or 2 people, and it's usually me by myself. I do these on my days off. That's when I'm loading up the binoculars. I'm going by myself, and I'm spending 3 to 4 hours at one farm, and I'm going meticulously through the woods. I'm walking trails, but I'm covering open areas. I'm using my binoculars. I'm doing the grid pattern, and I'm spending a lot of time specifically looking for certain antlers. I do this a lot, like during the weekdays when I'm off work. And it's how I
he
found
just likes
some
to
of these.
wander around the woods by himself.
Right, and I'll get to why we do it later, but it's my scouting tool. So I don't, when you have these private farms, during late summer and during the deer season, we're not going into our sanctuary areas, or we're not trying to blow certain areas out, or we're keeping pressure off certain farms even. This time of year is when all that goes away. It all goes away. I can get in there and find beds, scrapes. I get my hunt stand map out.
'Cause any other
And I
time of
mark-
the year, we're not doing that.
Yeah, I mark everything. I do all my scouting during these focus shed hunts. Like I said, I'm usually alone. I got a backpack. I got water. I got snacks. I got my binoculars, and I'm just spending a ton of time in the woods. My phone is out constantly, not only tracking where I'm walking, but I'm writing down all the sign that I find so I can reference it. You know, I have maps going back to 2019, 2018, so I can reference like, oh man,
Do you do a
there's
separate
yeah,
map for each year?
separate map for each year. So there's all, you know, I go back and you start looking at stuff late summer. It's like, wow, there's always a scrape here, or there's always, you know, oh, I've marked this trail crossing 3 times, but I've never hunted near it. Maybe I should start. Maybe I should check that trail crossing out. You know, that kind of stuff happens a lot when I'm doing these focus.
And the use of that tool is fairly new too, because you can
Yeah.
track yourself too. So you're like, oh, I've already looked here 2 weeks ago. See if
Right.
he shed recently. I can go back and look at the same spot.
I like doing both styles, the sprint and the focused. They each have their own applications. You know, it just depends on the day.
And the app you use, Hunt Stand, right?
I use Hunt Stand and Onyx. I have them both. I prefer Hunt Stand for doing like my private land stuff around here. But when we go to big public land pieces out of state and stuff, that's when I use Onyx more.
Yeah, the one thing about Hunt Stand, I don't know why Onyx doesn't do it, I don't know why Go Hunt doesn't do it, is all the different types of maps. On
Yeah.
Hunt Stand, you can bring up, there's like 12, 13 different kinds of maps.
Yeah, I like
Black
the,
and
it
white,
changes.
topo, different satellite versions.
That's the nice part. I can get different satellite pictures. And I know that there's going to be guys that are like app nerds are going to be like, oh, you can download this or you can find it here, or you got to use Go Hunt or one of these other ones. But
And I remember the huge thing on Hunt Stand is there was one app that was, I don't know if it was taken in just the right time of the fall, but all the oak trees were orange and all the other trees were
right, so
green. And then you could only see it in that one Hunt Stand app.
So I think it's the I can't remember what the map box. I think it's the map box filter. A lot of the farms around here, the imagery was taken maybe in November, early December. So there's no leaves on any trees but the oaks.
For some
the
reason,
oaks are little
holding
pumpkin
longer.
dots all over. So you can find your oak trees and your conifers real easy with that. But yeah, that's the focus. And I spend a lot of time doing that. You know, phone out and just gridding, and I'm filming myself, and I got a camera in my backpack and a camera on my bino
there's a million
harness.
YouTube videos of Caleb shed hunting out there.
Yeah, finding nothing. Sometimes you do find the good ones, though. The third one that I don't have written down, but I remembered when I saw Dylan sitting here, is the driving, because I've never found a road shed, but I found a bunch from tractors and side-by-sides. And I remember one day Dylan found one. It was almost turkey season, so it was April.
right here.
Yeah, you're driving down the lane. Dylan's like, stop, jumps off the gator, little 4-point side.
That we walked by hundreds of
Yeah,
times.
literally hundreds of times. But I found so the one buck here, Fat Bastard. I found one of his best sheds. This one right here I was driving the gator with Dad. We were just out checking. I don't even know what we were doing, looking for mushrooms or something. And it was already like later in the spring, and I'd spent 20 days looking for it, couldn't find it, gave up on finding it, and it was wrapped around basically a bird feeder or one of Dad's birdhouses boxes in some taller weeds, and I just happened to glance over while driving the side by side.
I've noticed I find a lot in turkey season when it's green coming up, and you can just see like
Contrast
that
different.
nice one you found. I don't know if it's here, but at
Oh yeah,
when
that
we were
one.
hunting out
That one's
there.
up top there. It's the
Yeah.
farthest left.
We
one
actually
over there.
saw that deer when we were shed hunting that.
Yep.
He ran out, had both sides on.
And then actually, when it comes to Fat Bastard, I found his other side that year from the tractor. We were moving blinds for turkey season. We were getting ready to.
So you found both of those late.
Both of them were late, and I looked everywhere. And the one that was in the grass, I could see why I couldn't find it. It blended in pretty good. The other one was just laying next to a log, and I was going to talk about that a little bit. Where we find him during bedding, he had bedded next to a log, a big blowdown on a ridge top, and we walked by that one a ton. And I just happened to see it from the tractor when I was elevated. It was a spot that you don't really pay attention to. It's right where you shot your last 3 deer.
Yeah, right where that blind is.
Yeah, so you don't pay attention to it because we hunt right by there and it's right next to a trail. So I would just walk by all the time. But when I was up on the tractor, I happened to glance over it. I could look over this log and bam, there's a 60-inch side just sitting there.
Say the last day of season, when I was hunting, I was glassing for sheds too.
Oh,
in the
yeah.
creek bottom.
Yep. The whole time I was hunting the last 2 weeks of season, I would glass the field every time I got in the blind just to see if there was any. There was no gimme sheds this year out in the fields.
Not yet.
Not yet. So those are the 3 types of shed hunts that we do. Like I said, the sprint, the focus, and the driving.
Well, and you kind of do. So the focused one, sometimes you're searching for a specific buck that you know is in a specific area, like this year, and you haven't been able to find him.
I've done on 2 different farms. I've done massive focus searches. I've done 4 for the one buck. His shed's right here. The 10-point we were hunting late season. This is from last year. I've done 4 focused walks for this buck. Haven't found him. And then I did 1 or 2. I can't remember if it's 2, but at least one good one for the buck that Nick was hunting early season, the one Tyler wounded.
But do we know if that buck's shed yet?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got
confirmed.
video. We have video of him in January shed with his leg completely fucked up. So we know for a fact that he shed in January
Somewhere.
somewhere. So
Just not
I
sure
did it. Like I said, I've done 2 focused walks. I think for his. One was a serious focused walk, a couple hours. I mean, I walked 10 feet scan the entire section of woods where he spent his time, and I couldn't find him, and it really pissed me off. I thought I would. I ran into one cell camera, the first time I've ever knowingly walked up on a cell camera on a property line. I might have been 20 yards over. And I just happened to look up, and there's a tagged cam right in my face. Way better.
What's up?
I was walking the border because that farm has, so someone might have a picture of me out there, or it's dead because it was February, so their camera was probably dead. But they
Half
have
of
2
our
tree
cameras
stands.
are dead, so I'm sure all of
I
the
gotta
other
go get
people's
mine
cameras
out.
are dead.
They have 2 tree stand. This particular property has 2 tree stands on our property, but they're
Facing theirs.
they're like 10 feet onto our property by the maps and the markers, but they're facing their property, so it's not. It's one of them deals.
That's just kind of.
It's a very big farm.
neighbors.
Yeah, it's a very big farm. Me and Nick are gonna go talk to him. Actually, it's Nick's farm. Nick
We've
Powers.
all killed deer on the property line.
Yeah, I found 2 dead bucks this year doing the focus. Well, one dead buck this year
Yeah.
doing the focus walk.
First one was the smell.
Yeah, the first buck we went in. So that this deer that we are doing the focused walks for, when Tyler wounded him, we started smelling a deer about 3 weeks after Tyler wounded him. So we went in looking for his body and found a different dead buck on the same farm. So the same farm has 2 dead bucks, but we did find one during the focus
You bring
walk.
those heads back yet?
I cut them off and put them. I cut them off and put them by the pull off, and called the game warden and texted the game warden, and then finally got a reply back from the game warden that he's going to send the tags, but they have not arrived in the mail yet, so they are still on the farm because I don't want to go.
Because there is a weird rule in Ohio where you need a salvage tag for a dead head.
Yeah.
Even if it's been dead for 10 years.
Technically, yeah.
Technically. So every head that we have up in the garage, most of them nowadays have tags somewhere for them.
Yeah,
There's some
Jim-
old ones that don't, but most of them do.
Yeah, so if you're listening, Eric, thank you for the tags. Please don't come arrest me for a 20-year-old deadhead that's rotting in the
I'm not
garage.
sure how that works because we got West Virginia heads. We got all sorts of heads.
Yeah, you just...
The one last thing you didn't talk about when finding sheds would be cell cams. There has been some instances where we found sheds
Yeah, so
via cell cam.
Right, so we... late season baiting, heavy late season baiting, we've had antlers fall off.
And I don't know if that's on your list, but that's what I was going to bring up.
I was gonna. So the next thing I was gonna transition to from our 3 types of shed hunting is where we do it, food, trails, and bedding. And we find the majority of our sheds, I would say, on food, either bait, food plots, or crop fields, just out in the open. We find a
If
lot.
we are baiting late season, we have a much higher success rate in finding sheds.
Except for
than if
this
we're
year,
not.
for some reason.
Because there's no bugs.
We did a lot of baiting this year and haven't found a lot of sheds yet.
There's no bucks, I guess.
There's years we don't do any baiting and it kind of hurts our shed hunting. There's years we do a lot of baiting.
Yeah,
Find a lot of sheds.
Well, if there's no deer there in late season, there simply won't be any sheds. Just like if there's a lot of pressure in the woods late
Yep.
season, there's not going to be as many sheds because those deer weren't hanging out there when they shed their antlers.
Yeah. So this year though we changed up our baiting limit. We used to centrally bait so that we could basically have the deer centered in our property and we could hunt and we could like sneak in on our setups. This year, the way the deer were naturally moving late season, they were using this green hay field. So we used our bait around that green hay field, which is actually a farm over from our main farm, and it didn't center the deer at all on our property. So we didn't have a lot of buck action late season
and on
our
our
property.
south property, due to when we did the drone podcast, we flew the drone up. There's just no deer.
No, there was some does. on
No
the
deer hanging
fringes.
out on our south property all late season.
Because we had beans that died.
Yeah.
We had bean fields that got accidentally
Huge
sprayed.
conspiracy theory in Northeast Ohio this year.
Yeah, a lot of bean fields got sprayed with the wrong. Yeah, nerds.
It's
If
a big
you're
thing.
paying attention, a lot of bean fields got sprayed with the wrong spray. It wasn't just our farmer; it was lots of different farmers. So our bean fields died in August, and we had no crops on the south
So
side.
we just had a
couple
ghost
food
town.
plots, and we had some good bucks, but they weren't using it for feeding. They were just chasing does through some
Mm-hmm.
of our thicker areas. and it didn't hold a lot of deer. And late season when that drone, like you said, when that drone was up, it was pretty
Yeah,
wasteland.
so we might do a couple walks over there, but there's no real point in shed hunting on the
Yeah.
south side
Nope.
because we know there was
It's
no
not-
bucks
It's
there.
not super thick over there, is it?
Well, we
Certain
got
air-
south,
cer-
yeah.
We've got
So
some
that,
fixed ones.
Bird's Nest was using our real thick bedding behind the lake, right there by the lake, and then he'd cut through and head south of ours, and there was some thick bedding back there.
Yeah.
Those are the two spots we were getting him a lot in between there. But
Oh, I'm thinking north. Never mind.
There is not much.
That's what I'm saying.
North side, there's not much thick besides up here close to the
I
road.
don't know why I was.
yeah, the
thinking-
north side's more of the open flat woods, which I was going to talk about here. I find a lot of sheds. We talked about food. We can hit that a little bit more if you want, but I mean it's pretty simple. Where the deer eat, they drop an antler, and it's
Yeah.
usually out in the open.
Yeah.
Trails, I do find a ton of sheds on trails leading from and this is very basic stuff, but people overthink it. They're walking around the woods not focusing on where they need to find these sheds. Trails leading from the bedding to the food, somewhere where there is an obstacle, I find a lot of sheds. Creek
Somewhere at the-
crossings.
You know, it's crazy. I've never found one like that.
I
I
found
don't know, and I look fence rows, creeks.
the Gimp right here. I found his shed hanging from a bush on the other side of a creek where he hopped a creek, popped his shed antler off, and it landed in a bush. It was my only hanger. But I find him on creek crossings. The heavy
Most of the sheds I found probably weren't in their beds.
up and down trails. So
Yeah.
like when you're going up and down hills, if you're going, there's an elevation change. The deer has to contort its body, and the buck will lose his antlers when he hits the dip or crests the top. I find a lot of trails or sheds right off the trails that way. The third one I have written down, which is very obvious, it's bedding, but it wouldn't. I want to touch on how it's not the bedding that you think it would be. Everyone thinks super thicket, got to crawl around on my hands and knees and get thorned up. That's where I'm going to find the big buck sheds because he's hiding in these thickets. I have found some big buck sheds that way.
I've only ever found one shed doing that, and it's a senior shed. It's probably up
Yep.
there. And it was actually my dog that found it.
Right. Yeah.
In some super thick stuff. The rest of the stuff, it's more around that super thick stuff where the deer are hiding, and they're kind of using the thick stuff as a barrier.
Right, so
I've
that's
found
what I
a
was gonna
lot
touch
of,
on.
dude, any little knob. They're
Yeah.
like in the
Yeah.
middle of the woods, little knob where they have, whichever way the wind is, a good easy out for them. Maybe a thick side on one side, but it's just for
Because they
some
use
reason
that as a barrier.
you always see just beds on top of these knobs. You could tell they're big.
And I find the majority of mine in beds that are up against trees or down logs in open woods. So we have a ton of open wood bedding in this area of Ohio, or open bluff bedding, thick bottoms with an open top. Right at the ridge top, there's going to be a tree blown down. The deer are going to have their back up against it. I find so many sheds laying in spots like that, just in the open woods. But then once you pick it up and sit there and look around, you're like, well, it makes sense why he was here.
Well, yeah, and so I know I'm going to keep bringing up the drone because we learned a lot just from flying that drone a few times. All those deer we were seeing bedded during the day were kind of in the open.
Yeah.
None of them were in super thick areas.
Nope.
They're
No,
not under some big bush or some fallen down tree or anything like
we
that.
went to the thick areas right off the rip and didn't find any.
deer.
And then we started finding them more in the
It,
open
it seemed like the
areas.
deer were like 50, 100 yards away from that thick stuff.
And the snow on the ground right here is nice because in 2 days we can walk around and see all
see
the
every
beds,
bed.
and that's important to go and start marking beds. I love looking in those big open woods where I know that a buck has been spending time, because if you can hit enough beds, you're going to find one of his antlers usually. I don't find a ton of sets together here in Ohio, so a lot. I know you see them on social media, you see them online. These beautiful match sets. I find a lot of match sets, but they're usually a couple 100 yards
Yeah.
apart.
The only match that I found laying on top of each other was a small 8-point years and years ago. I don't know if we still have them or not, but it was just a small matched 8. They were literally sitting on top of each other, and every other match that I found have been either 50 to 250 yards
Right.
away.
I've only
I
found
remember the big
one.
8-point set you found was probably 50 yards apart.
away. Yeah,
I
those
did
are
find no brows, the deer that got killed by Saffel, the neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
couple farms over. I did find those match sets with like 3 feet apart. They were laying like perfectly like you would see a
Yeah,
match
the only
set.
match that I've ever found laying next to each other was Southern Ohio gun season. I came up over a hill. I mean, shed, January. This is gun season the next year.
Yeah,
so they're a
Sheds
whole
were
year
perfect,
almost.
perfect though. I mean, they're a little white faded, but they're laying just touching tips basically.
Yeah.
First time.
That brings up a memory, a shed hunting memory. A couple years ago, I was on a satellite farm of ours. It's a spot. It's one of Nick and Tyler's like secondary farms that I shed hunt, and I didn't find a match set, but I found 7 sheds off 7 different bucks, all within like a 1 acre area, maybe a little bit less. Like there was a small spot. It was open woods. It was open woods, but there was a lot of thick areas around it, but none of the sheds were in the thick areas. And it must be where a bachelor group of bucks was just bedding before going out to eat.
Yeah, and you
got
gotta think late season,
So
these-
many different bucks were shed within. There's a picture of me holding all the bases together. On
So we
social
we
media.
call these deer yarding in the late season. They
Yeah.
all getting into big groups and big herds, and they don't really move far. They just go from their bedding area to food to bedding to food. So if you can find one shed, it's pretty good to look around that same area for other sheds, not even from the same buck, but from different deer.
Yeah, if I find a good shed, I always do a real good look around the surrounding area for its match. Like I said, we usually find them a couple 100 yards apart. For example, the buck Isaac shot this year, Northside 9. I found his match set last year, but I think they were like 360 yards apart.
Did you find both of these?
Yeah.
And I found the shed
Off the 10 point.
off the temp in the same field.
In the same field.
So all
one
three
of
of these
the
sheds?
No, one of those was in a field with the 10 point sheds. They were in the same spot basically. I picked up your buck first, and then he found the 10 point later. They were just sitting there, open field. It was alfalfa, I think, it was winter wheat that was popping up, green winter wheat.
And this was my buck last year, and he's as he sits right here, he's probably 108, 10.
Yeah, he
inches,
put on
maybe
12,
12.
30 plus inches.
Yeah.
His
This
other
year he
shed
was-
though was 360 yards away in the open woods bedding. It was up against a log in the open woods.
And a small disclaimer for everybody that's probably huffing at home. It is our best guess sometimes about these deer and these sheds.
Yeah.
If this was my buck from this year, it's our best guess that it was due to this G3 right here, just the shape of it, the way this antler works. If you compare it to my buck that I shot this year, it's
And
got
the
the
brows.
same exact shape.
Yep.
So a lot of times it's our best guess, but it's our best educated guess. There's only been a few times where it's been a guaranteed same.
It is
deer.
sometimes hard to tell 8-point mainframe 8. So
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah,
many of them. and
This
there's-
one just right here, this
Yeah.
looks so.
Oh yeah. Well, but he this side, was it this side he had the inside?
Yeah,
kicker?
it was this point right here. This point
Laid
just,
over.
just laid
and
over.
the range. So like where you found that shed, where I found the shed from last year, you watched him, and we've talked about this
In
at
that same
length.
field.
You watched him opening day last year, opening day this year. He was in that field a lot. I mean, it's pretty easy to put that puzzle piece together.
Yeah.
And then I only found one side, but we have the match set to my buck from 2021, Dad's buck. Dad found one side where the buck crossed the road. He went across the road, popped his antler off in the ditch, basically. It
Yeah,
was
the
only
shed was 10 feet from the road.
10 feet from the road. And then I found his other one also not far from the road. They were probably 200 yards apart, but both sheds were within. You could see the road from where we found both sheds. So that was a deer that was bedding kind of close late season.
And a lot of times when we find these sheds, we know right away because we get to know these deer from looking at
Yep.
countless videos, countless
Uh-huh.
pictures, countless things.
And then I found his buddy that he was running around with that year. I found it this year, 2 years later. This shed right here sat in the woods for 2 years, and I walked by it a bunch. And so did Ernie. The best part was it was 10 feet from Ernie's tree stand, just sitting there.
So moving on, since we're talking about the mouses,
Meese.
meese. It's a weird thing. Sometimes these sheds can sit in the woods for 5 years and not get touched, and then sometimes they're chewed on within weeks or days.
So the West Virginia sheds on the wall over there, you won't be able to see them in the video.
Those are 2-3 months old.
Yeah,
tops.
3 months old. Every tip is missing and every tip is chewed, and they're in good shape, but they're pretty chewed on. And
then-
those sat in the woods for 3 months.
The set that I found from the freak of an 8-point.
Yeah,
So we found those. I think it was in March. So those were on the ground for less than a month.
a month or two.
And
most.
the whole one main beam's already chewed off on it. And this was giant deer. This was a 170-inch 8-point.
And then this one spent 700 days in the woods, and it has just a little chewing on the G2. That's it. Like everything else is pristine.
Yeah, so
700 days.
It
in the
is
woods.
interesting.
Yeah.
Sometime we need to put a shed out and put a long-term trail camera on to see what's eating these.
Our Giracus, Alex, has been asking me to do this for years.
Because a lot of people
for years.
a lot of
There's
people
no reason
say
why we shouldn't. Why
it's-
shouldn't we?
A lot of people say it's squirrels, but is it fox squirrels? Is it chipmunk? Is it mice?
Does a
it's
coyote come and try to take it?
They do say coyotes will move them, and I do think
tie it to a
I think
tree.
a lot of it is mice
Yeah, I think
what
if
I
it's
would
in a
guess.
spot with a lot of mice.
or chipmunks. I don't think a freaking fox squirrel's going around chewing on these things.
And I also wonder if it sits there for so long, do they lose interest in it because it loses its
Does
value?
it chalk out? Like
Yeah,
this one's a
or
little
like
bit chalked.
The nutrients in the shed itself.
Right.
So it's fresh ones that get chewed on. The old ones, if they didn't find them in time, they're
Well-
like, nope, I don't want to mess with that. And
So
it's gonna
here's
lay
another
there for
conversation.
3 years.
The moose shed behind Ethan, if you want to grab it right there. So that shed was sitting face down like this.
Yeah, like that.
It was sitting like this.
that.
So this was to the sun. This bottom, you could still see was bloody still. So this thing came off super fresh. I found it in May, so I'm not sure when it came off, but there was still blood on the base,
stank.
and it was stinky from the blood on there. But it's already chewed off. So this thing could have been on the ground for maybe a week. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know when moose actually shed.
There was a lot of squirrels in that spot you found this.
And there was a
because
lot.
I was feeding them by hand.
There was a lot of moose
'Cause I was
sign.
so
You could
bored.
tell people it's a whitetail shed.
Yeah, that's a whitetail shed. But that was found, in
That's
Montana.
sweet.
You know, the funny thing was we never saw a moose when we were out
we
there.
didn't see anything. That's a story for another day.
We found
We didn't
so
see a living
much,
bean
but we found so
Boomerang.
much elk, moose, and bear shit.
everywhere.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a story for another day.
Coming up soon, though.
Yeah, coming up very soon. So why is it important? Why is shed hunting important? Well, for one, building history with deer is our number one thing that we enjoy doing here in our home farm.
That's what we like to do. We like to tell
Caleb's
story.
number one thing.
Yeah, my number one thing. Building history. Like, I enjoy building history with these deer, watching them for years. When you have a ground of your own or even public land that you spend a lot of time on, you get to know these deer. It's just cool to figure out the puzzle piece. It's cool to have the shed and thousands of trail camera videos and 5 in-person encounters and then finally kill the deer. Like, that is
cool.
That is just a feeling
the
that's
ultimate goal.
undescribable in the woods.
And I know it's not as cool to have the sheds from a buck, but we have several bucks up here, Fat Bastard, I don't know, the 13 point, where we have multiple sheds of them. We never got to shoot them. We never had a chance to kill them. We don't know what happened to them, but we still have some history from them.
Yeah, and I got a list. At the end of the podcast, we'll go through the list of all the deer that we know.
I think a lot of my
because
problem
their
with
sheds.
finding sheds that deer I'm after is they winter different places, can't get permission there. It's across the street somewhere. Someone hunts, and I lose a lot of deer like that. So my shed, or where I hunt, my sheds are very limited, it seems like,
Yeah.
to
And
what deer
that's-
there are.
and
Even
that-
if I feed late season.
And that goes with the deer. Each individual deer has its own style of range. There are ones that are similar. We have bucks that are very similar to deer that came before them. But, for the most part, every deer has its own unique range. And, and that's just because, like Fat Bastard, for example, we had one velvet picture of this deer over a 3-year period, but we found 4 sheds. He was always on our property late.
So that
but
brings
never early,
That brings up something you might have to think about. Do we have any sheds from the bucks that we've killed early? So bigger bucks that we've killed early. Do we have any sheds from any of those deer? Because my last 2 deer were both killed gun season or post gun season. We have a couple sheds from each one. But I don't know about early season deer. Cause
When was the last time we killed an early season buck?
Luke's
The earliest deer would be Luke's. We don't have any sheds from Luke's buck this
we
year.
don't even know what buck he was.
Yeah,
So
we
were
kind of have an
watching film
idea.
the other day.
We have an
and
idea, but we don't.
We saw him.
So
And Hook,
not really. No.
Hook we had no sheds from.
Yeah, and that.
Chased that deer for 4 years, countless encounters, shot him twice, blah, 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 blah. Everyone knows the story.
No sheds. I wore out 10 pairs of boots over that 4-year period looking for his sheds. Never found one. A guy we know did find one. I'm not exactly sure where he found it. It was south of us,
Yeah, not close.
and then he lost it or gave it away or something. So he doesn't even have it anymore, which is kind of sad. But
And Senior, we found a couple sheds from him, but he never really seemed to hang out late season.
no, I mean we did get some pictures of him late season. And unfortunately, he died early in October, the year that he got killed by the neighbor. We had 4 sheds off of him, 3 or 4.
I
3
am
at least.
excited to get after that tall 8. He's still around. Yep.
Have
He was-
have you gone and looked for sheds any?
No, he was holding a week and a half 2 weeks ago. And then I got a picture of it. It might have been him. It was yesterday, and it was a buck with both sides. It was blurry, it was snowy, and I can't tell if it's him. I don't think it is.
My
but
cameras
another
are-
buck that's still holding both sides. I think I'm going to give it till end of February and really go in there because there's no one else shed hunting that area.
Yeah, when was the last time we had a buck with antlers on camera?
I've gotten a few small
I got a
ones.
few on the south side, small guys.
Few small ones, but the one that we're after, the big shooters or the big mature deer, it doesn't seem like they're
Dude, they just
holding anymore.
disappear. And where they shed is a mystery.
When bucks shed in January, which, we have bucks that shed in January kind of quite often, physically finding those sheds is kind of important because it tells you exactly where that deer was either bedding or
And
traveling
it's still
during
season.
season. So you got to mark that down for the future because that is some evidence
huge.
that is big.
It's a lot different than a buck that sheds in March.
Yeah,
because who cares where that deer is in March?
Yes, exactly. Because and especially when it comes to hunting, because for the first half of the season, the food in the tree cover is completely different than what it is in March. So, and exercise, honestly, being able to get in the woods and walk 3 or 4 miles every day is huge this time of year. 'cause
Especially in
otherwise,
February.
we're going to be
Start
doing
dealing with our
nothing.
packs on. 100 pounds.
Yeah.
I did a lot of training for the bear hunt by shed hunting last year.
That not going on a bear hunt this year is going to screw me because I was training hard for that last year.
Are you training hard right now?
Yeah, but
Harder, yeah.
not as hard as
right.
I would.
I was training hard this time of year too, and I'm not right now at all. And like we talked about the building history and stuff. To me, it's pretty cool, and I could tell you stories about every single one of these antlers. They're more than we could even go through in this podcast. You guys would get real bored if I started walking through.
So if anybody has any ideas on how to tag these antlers where it doesn't look gaudy, where we can kind of label them, that would be nice.
Yeah, we kind of
Caleb
right
is
on the-
eventually going to forget what
Maybe.
he does sometimes pick up an antler and go, I'm not sure, I don't remember what this antler's from.
And then he also
So there'd
looks
be
at the
nice.
picture.
There'd be a nice way to tag these without looking gaudy to figure out what year we found them, what buck they were from.
Yeah.
And then the opposite side, he also gets a picture. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's his left side from 2 years ago and
and
his
I
right
have-
side from 3 years
I have
ago,
no
and then we
idea
got a
what he's
match
talking
set.
about.
It's right here."
Because there's 15 years of antlers from 5 different properties up here and a couple different states.
Yeah. I found sheds now in 3 states. You've probably found the same. Ohio, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania.
I got 4. I got Idaho, Nebraska, Montana.
And Ohio.
I have Ohio, PA. Found a dink little shitty one.
Did
I
we
think
find
I
any
left it.
sheds in Utah?
I
No.
found.
Maybe.
I think we found one chalked up.
Yeah, but
Just
where
a
we
shitty
hunt
one.
in Utah, they're not there in the
No.
wintertime. It's a little different out west because sometimes the migration happens.
We didn't find any mule deer sheds in Montana this year, did we? I know we found a couple in Nebraska.
No, but you found a big elk shed.
I know, but I don't remember finding any mule deer sheds. I don't think.
No.
Is that the only shed you've ever found?
This is the only shed.
I only found one shed.
One. This one right here, and it's laying in the
Wow.
open field. So like, I suck at shedding.
You know, I found a shed one time behind mom and dad's. I was walking. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was walking down this lane, and I was gonna go shed hunt down. I was young, in this coonhound. I heard something running around, looking around, like, what the hell? This coonhound comes running up out of the bottom, up in the hill. He's got a giant 8-point side in his mouth, running around with it. I'm like, and there's no one around, and I'm like,
Hey, look at that!
grabbed it. No, I have it at home still, dude. Giant. I mean, he was
Huge.
probably 155 for an 8, and he was just a mega. And I'm like, I can't believe that. And I took it, and he ran away. I don't know how he had it, how he found it.
Yeah, and so the one elk shed back there, the one bigger one, I found that in the dark, actually, with a headlamp. And I was videotaping when I found it, too.
I found a
in
match
Idaho.
set when it was dark with my dad. We were in southern Ohio going to put a climber up, going up a tree, and it was real windy and rainy. I looked down, and there's a match set laying right there.
I've always talked about going shed hunting at night because
It focuses you.
Thermal.
Well, and that's the thing. I think it's easier to track deer blood trail at night.
Oh,
because,
100%.
because once you're on that track, you're using your light and you're staying right in front of you. When it's daylight out, you're looking around too much. You're just fucking looking around too much. And that's the way it is with shed hunting. If there were some certain trails and stuff that I wanted to really, really focus on and not get distracted, going at night and looking down would be the way.
We'll have to try an experiment.
Yeah.
Because we encountered that in Montana this year when we were tracking Dylan's mule deer. So he shot this mule deer, perfect shot, bleeding like crazy, but we could not stay on the blood trail.
Couldn't see it.
It was like, because there was it was an overload of our senses because we're up in the mountains in the
Yeah.
desert and shit. I think at night it probably would have been a lot easier.
Well,
That always happens
The
on
color
blood
of the
trails.
ground, like the sand and the dirt and the rock, it was like I couldn't believe
Even though
it.
you
only
10
went
ringed the deer and he was
50
bleeding like
yards.
crazy. So yeah, we'll have to try an experiment.
I wonder if thermals would work if you were to go out at night, because they hold heat after a sunny day.
Yeah,
Go
I
out
mean,
right after
you'd have
dark.
to have the perfect conditions.
Yeah, but I wonder if it'd work if you'd see them, because I know when we were looking for my buck the one night, Kasich had his thermal. I was just scanning to see if I could find a body, and there's
antlers
the rocks. No, you can. We never found them that night, but you could just the rocks that were holding heat all night. I mean, just they were glowing.
I do want to use Isaac's drone to do some shed hunting. Here we go with drones again.
Yeah, drone.
We
Drone.
could
Keyword.
go shed hunt fields that we don't theoretically. We could go shed hunt fields we don't have permission for. Just fly the drone 10 feet off the ground and grid search it. On property that we're not allowed to be on. We wouldn't be able to go and get the shed. 'cause
Go
that'd
in
be
it.
We could go
trespassing.
ask, but
Yeah, but we could ask or
Illegal.
whatever.
I'll go in at night.
Yeah, we know you would. Dylan.
Shed's a shed.
But I mean, we're gonna have to do that for the 10-point sheds because I can't find them.
He
God,
could
the
be,
south
you
side
think he
tent,
could be
too.
in? You think he
Make
could
a
venture
mark
up there?
Make a mark on the.
Yeah, sorry.
He said a property.
Do you think he could be?
Yeah, he could be.
Could
100%.
be north?
He 100% could be in there. 100%. My favorite shed story is the shed at the end of the bar there, Freak Daddy. This is the biggest shed I ever found, 82 and 4/8. I was looking for it, but I didn't think I was going to find it. It was a dream to find it because he did not spend the majority of his time on our property. We've done the whole Freak Daddy podcast, so we've talked about how we had
you
one
pick up a
encounter
shed
that
like
year.
this.
And there was other guys that had him way more frequently on camera, and I just got lucky. I found him on the neighbors where I was allowed to be in a bottom swamp, walking a trail in some bulrushes, and they were just he just laying right there.
What a weird
Just
deer, because he
beautiful.
did not rub
Nope.
anything off. So his obviously.
Well, look at the inside where Dylan's thumb is, though.
Yeah, he rubbed.
He
a
rubbed
little.
up top.
Maybe
there.
it's just because of the way his antlers were shaped.
Yeah,
Because
He
he's
might
like
never-
prickly down here, and then
Because
a
he
little
couldn't
bit
rub
rubbed
down
off
there.
here.
yeah, because all these antlers are smooth as hell.
I guess these antlers came together, and there was so much shit up here that he really couldn't get to the bases like you can in these little deer.
Just that was
So that's the
beautiful.
biggest shed you've ever found.
82 and 4. And then Matt Pavlik found the year before his other side, which is not that one. That one. The year before he found that, and he was a very respectable deer then, obviously, with all the characteristics you want. He's got a bladed beam. He's pretty heavy for a younger buck. He's got a kicker already, split brow starting.
You got a bot hole too.
Yeah, that shed's beautiful. I mean, that's where it's at right there.
Is that the biggest shed we
Actually
found in the
sticking
group?
out of it.
Yeah, Nick found one that was like mid-70s at his farm on a buck that we don't know much about. Dropped it on camera, actually.
Yeah.
Late season a couple years ago.
Big funky
It
buck.
went like 73 or 74.
My biggest one was probably from the 13 point. He's probably like 60 some inches, because the giant 8 point set I found were so chewed up. So I
Yeah,
guess
if we
they'll
did
throw it
actual, if we fudged the guess on those 8 points, it might be
down.
your biggest
'cause
one.
he's got
But
that beam up there.
the bigger sheds are honestly easier to find. I found a couple spikes. I've never found a button buck. People find button bucks. I found a few spikes.
Yeah, where they just find a little thimble.
It's probably the most obvious thing you've ever said. The bigger ones are easier to find. No way.
But it is true. Like,
But there's
the
also a lot
bigger
less.
sheds
Sometimes
are
you can't
way
find
easier
them.
to find.
Well, and let's talk about, so this deer, he shed this, but then he was seen with his other side a couple weeks later.
Yeah.
Is he walking like this?
Yeah, right. His other side was bigger than that.
So
So
he
that
was-
82-inch side, his other side was bigger.
So after he shed this side, he was seen on the hoof carrying his other side like a couple weeks later. I think it was after you found this.
Yeah, we never saw.
And it was a mile away.
No one else ever found that shed.
And this antler's probably what? I don't know, 7 pounds maybe?
Yeah.
More than 5.
Yeah,
So he's walking around
it's
all
unbelievable.
lopsided.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
So sometimes the deer drop the antlers right away, and sometimes they carry them for weeks.
We could touch real quick. Most of our sheds are pretty clean. If you look at the base, not a lot of skull. Every once in a while, we'll find an antler
It's like,
that has a lot of
Yeah.
skull
This one's
popped
got
out.
a little bit more.
yeah.
Yeah, that one's got a little bit more.
Can
Which
you
is
just
so
imagine
weird.
that falling off your head, though?
So they say that if some deer, they're not quite ready to shed. It's like a tooth, I think. You know, they're getting ready
Pull
to
your
shed.
tooth off and he'll bleed.
Right, they're getting ready to shed, but like maybe they lock up with another buck or they hit it on something.
Pops off.
And it pops off before it's quite ready, and it takes a lot of stem with it. They say those bucks can get infections and die.
Well, because
So
they
that could
say
explain you find you find a shed off a buck and never see him again. It could be because he pulled off too much.
Well, they try to say that it's painless, but a lot of these deer bleed a lot too. So
Yeah.
it's got to be painful when they're knocking them off. It's bleeding.
And you should
can't
key in on
imagine
I mean,
that.
you're
that's
ripping,
painless.
like, some of them I've seen, like, a half an inch, 3/4 of an inch
But
coming
then there's
out
like
of
a
their
bl-
skull.
and there's a blood trail.
Yeah, so
It's
like
gotta
when it's
hurt.
snowy like this and you're checking beds and snow is melting, if you come across blood, follow it
Yeah.
because
Have you ever found one on a blood trail? Would you say?
I don't know if I've ever found.
I've seen blood trails, but we don't know if that's from does or what the deal is. With
I've
that.
seen blood trails. I don't think I've ever followed a blood trail to a shed, and I have found some. I've found some good sheds in the snow, and I don't recall ever
But
seeing.
we
blood
have
around
found
them.
bloody sheds. Like the moose shed I found
Yeah.
was bloody and stinky still.
Yep.
It was also 80 degrees. That didn't help.
No.
But that's a lot of our stories.
Yeah, there's. We don't have to go too far into. We've covered most of the bucks that we have
And I would say,
good stories about.
would you say it's 50-50 the deer we've killed we have sheds from? Or we don't have
recently?
sheds
Yeah,
from?
like so we got
My last 2 bucks we have 3 sheds from.
Yeah, we
One
have-
from 2022, 2 from my 2023 buck. I don't know. Do we have any from my 2021 7 point?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And
You know,
I
it's
don't,
one
I don't have
thing-
any sheds from Traveler or Massey, so only Dad's buck for me. So
You know, it's one thing
one
that I
out
don't
of
think
3.
I've ever done in my life that I know of is I don't think I have sheds from
A deer you
a
killed.
buck I've killed.
That would make sense with the way you hunt because you're
You're a little more
killing-
all over the place.
Yeah,
though.
you're killing your deer.
Yeah,
peak
but I
rut.
shed hunt them.
But you kill your deer November 16th, 17th, 18th, peak rut. Those deer might not be fully living on your property. They're
Not
sinking.
homesteading on yours.
It's
No.
a rut.
Well, I
zone.
know where it's at, and I know where they winter themselves. I just can't get in.
It's very frustrating to me when I can't find a shed that I
know.
think I should. And
I
I'm
really-
in that situation with $2 this year, and that bothers me.
I don't think I've ever killed a buck in November.
Yeah, you did. November 9th,
Which one was that?
your first one.
No, that was on Halloween.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Halloween.
Really?
Yeah.
The earliest
We were at
buck,
the Arter's farm
And
for
then
the
I've
Halloween
shot,
thing.
and I've shot 3 in gun season. One October 16th, and then one January whatever.
29th.
So I've
The
never
only-
shot one in November.
I've only killed
I've got
November.
October, November, December. I don't have January or February.
I have October. I have November 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st.
You have September.
I do have one September.
You shot one in
late
September.
September.
This
That was
is
early
stinky.
season. Yeah.
His September buck he tried to
Yeah.
eat it. Remember he tried to eat it?
yeah.
And your mule deer was September.
Well,
I've-
I'm talking whitetails. Yeah.
I shot a mule deer in August.
I've killed a couple whitetails in January. Killed
I've
the
killed
110,
does,
the
but I've
one
never killed a buck.
late
Only-
season behind my mother-in-law's house a couple years ago. That was January.
Only January for me, only $1. So
1 buck, 1 shed, 1 turkey.
a bunch of ones.
Yeah, you got your first of a lot of things going on here.
I'm gonna shoot turkey at the recurve this year.
no, you're not.
Watch me.
Do we have anything else shed hunting we want to talk about besides the fact that this year's been slow so far? But
Yeah, I've only
the
got
conditions haven't been great. I haven't even
I've
been
been
out.
seeing a lot of deer holding.
I've only found 2 old ones this year.
It's
so-
early. It's February 17th.
A buddy of mine that is the shed guru that goes a lot. He hasn't. I mean, he's found a couple, but he hasn't been looking for them.
It's still early. It's real early.
And I will say, this is going to be a weird opinion, but it's one of those weird Caleb knickknacks, I guess. I actually enjoy watching some of these shed hunting videos that come out this time of year from on YouTube and stuff. There's some really good videos of shed hunting, and I like to pay attention to where these people find their sheds. Honestly, it's a lot of fun for me to watch those types of videos. The one thing I will say is none of them are from Ohio. They're all Midwest.
Oh, no.
They're all Iowa, Kansas, some Illinois.
The best-
Barstool just put out an Illinois one, and they found a couple, and it was similar terrain to us. But
The best farm I've ever shed hunted was Brad's place down. It was his uncle's place
Yeah,
before he passed away, dude. And we went in there. First year we found 16 sheds in a day, one farm. Couldn't hunt it. And then next year we found like 18. Year after that we found 10, and it was unbelievable.
it always
was
seems
just
like
stupid.
It always seems like the first hunt or the first time or two you go into a new farm is when you find the most. Like
Well, no one hunted this farm. It was a sanctuary.
the farm near us with the business owner that has a large lake and a lot of property and a new house that we do our gun hunting stuff on some of our videos. The first time I walked in there was able to
Yeah,
shed
you were
hunt it.
finding
I
all
was
sorts.
just tripping on them in the open.
Yeah.
3 or
Just people
4 in
were-
an hour. You know?
could tell a property that doesn't get shed hunting because you
Yep.
can find.
Well, that's
And
where
you'll
all the
find
deer are
different
hiding.
year-old sheds. So you'll find one that's a year old or 4 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, these sheds are going to be there until turkey season. We've had a lot of guys hunting around us pick up sheds of bucks that we're looking for, or sheds that we wanted to find when they're out turkey hunting. So there's not a lot of guys up here that are shed hunting our areas until turkey season, and then
And
I find a couple during turkey season
And
every year.
sometimes Caleb does get a little antsy and shed hunts a little early.
Yeah, so this
so that
year
may keep us from signing some sheds because you bumped those deer away.
this year's unique, like we talked about, because we have only 1 buck that we really care about finding
Yeah.
on the one section of our farm. There's really only 1 buck that we care about finding. There's a bunch of 2-year-olds, but there's no 3-year-olds. There's 1 4-year-old. And as soon as that 4-year-old disappeared off cameras for 3 or 4 days straight, I went in and started looking because that's my best key that I have. It's possible. I thought I did a lot of research and I thought he had shed, but now I'm starting to second guess myself, and maybe he didn't shed,
Maybe
so
he
I
just
screwed
moved.
it up.
I don't think that was him. That
Yeah,
looked
I don't
like
think
that
the
ear,
more I look,
because
yeah.
it's almost exactly like that.
Yeah, the more I look, I don't think I have a picture of him
Well,
shed.
and
But
so
he
we-
did disappear from cameras.
And
Yeah.
we
so.
did find out that the deer has a split ear, right? That's what you're referencing.
I wouldn't call it
a
a split ear, but he's got a
Yeah,
chunk.
yeah,
Like a
it's
little
It's almost
button.
like a squirrel bit it.
Yeah.
like it's
Well, not-
it's
and
not,
he caught
I
a
think
tine.
my Indiana buck had it.
It's almost like that.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
he caught
a little bit
He caught a
deeper.
tine. Nothing.
or it could be
major.
hair that's different color. It's hard to tell.
Yeah. So
But he definitely has a little distinctive from that shed buck you have that you
and
thought was him.
and the other buck that we went in, the wounded one that we know for a fact shed in January. We went into 2 focused hunts like I talked about, but then we backed out because there were still 3 or 4 other bucks that we want to find still holding. So we backed out of there. Haven't been in there in over a week.
Probably go in there in a couple weeks. Once
Yeah,
all this
we're gonna
snow
go
melts.
in there.
I think this snow will melt this week. I think
It's going to be 50 something, I think, on Thursday.
Me and Nick wanted to spend President's Day shed hunting, but we might be scouting
5
instead.
inches of snow outside.
I know.
I think I'm going to go next weekend.
So if it
Pretty
doesn't
hard.
melt, we might be screwed. So it just depends. You can find sheds in the snow. If it snows like it did today, overnight last night, and you let it sit 4 or 5 days, and there's no new snow,
See the trails.
you can
and-
start following
oh, yeah.
trails and beds.
But
and
you will
feeding.
walk by someone.
Yeah, you
Someone.
will walk by sheds that are either buried from before or fell too deep. But a big shed like this is going to stick out. You're going to find it. So just because it's snowing doesn't mean you can't shed hunt. It's just fresh snow is a bitch.
And there is something about picking up a big shed that makes that deer more impressive. So this deer probably 140 inches, but this shed just seems huge
Yeah.
when you pick up an antler. So then when you pick up a shed from a 190-inch deer,
Yeah.
it's like a dinosaur bone, like giant.
Doesn't even look
And
real.
I'll probably never find a shed that big ever again. There's no sheds I could possibly find that
Not
size
here.
right now.
Yeah. Yeah, any interest in destination shed hunting? Because I know a lot of people will sneak into metro parks, and I know a lot of people go to public land, and some people just go to parks where you're allowed to kind of look, but technically not allowed to take sheds.
I would
They
be
take 'em.
interested in shed hunting where we go and hunt in the fall, PA, Indiana, West Virginia, and we do some shed hunting in West Virginia. But I don't, with the way life is and how busy we
hard to-
are, and kids and traveling and work and all this stuff, people make fun of our jobs, but we actually do have to work in the off season.
It's the same
It's
thing
hard
with-
to make it happen.
Same thing with scouting. Like we would love to go for 5 days in July,
Right.
find some velvet deer, find some sign. Just like we would love to go to Utah for 5 days in July.
I looked at flights the other day, $600. Not happening.
I'm gonna look
One good
again
day at the
close-
casino and you'd be in, bro.
I'm
gonna look again closer to season, but I mean it's a long flight out there. And you have to rent a car.
That's what I was looking
Unless
at.
someone can drop us off. But I'd love to be able to take water up the mountain. And
That's
look for
what
some
I-
velvet deer.
That's
Cash
what I
it.
was thinking.
That is a
Why don't we-
conversation for another day.
Why don't we pay that guy?
To take some water up for us.
Yeah,
I have.
I'll pay him.
We do a lot of shed hunting in West
500
Virginia
bucks.
when we go down in the spring and summer. We just don't find a lot.
Yeah.
I did take a trip to Indiana in the like late summer, early fall to scout this year. Didn't find any sheds. You found the tip of a. It's I don't know.
I
It
think
might be in
it's
your
in my
truck.
truck.
In your truck. You found a
Where is it?
tine in Indiana when we were
In a
hunting.
creek bed.
Yeah.
No other deer sign to be seen for miles. And I find a broken off tine. Could have been from a spike. Could have been from a 200-inch deer. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this year we might take a little advantage of trout fishing. We never do. We need to scout for deer and turkeys when we go trout fishing.
I still have cameras.
All we
up
want to
there.
do is drink beer.
Well, usually,
catch fish.
the past couple of years,
We don't even fish anymore.
The past couple
We
years-
All we do is
drive,
drink beer.
We drive all our crap up there, park it, and then just drink beer.
Yeah, set up tents and cook food and drink.
put a
beer.
line in.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's what I do.
I
fish
still
for 10
have
minutes and I
cameras
go,
Usually there's
though.
birds
I'm
gobbling
thirsty.
all over, but the past couple of years there has not been birds gobbling.
That's you guys. I won't be there this year. So
Last year I was fishing the first day we got there, and I saw gobblers fly down
Every
from the
year,
roost
I
across
swear
the
when
river.
we're
Yeah,
fishing
I
down
saw
there,
that.
there's always turkeys gobbling, but it's early. It's before turkey season starts.
they don't start
Their
till May
season's
1st.
late
Yeah, they don't start
and goes
till
till
May
Memorial
1st.
Weekend.
Yeah. And we're down there second week of April usually, so we're 2 weeks before season.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what that means here. Turkeys can move a lot in 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, especially big mountain birds up there.
All right, guys, that's our shed hunting podcast. I don't think we have anything else for
Yeah,
that.
this is Deer Shot Podcast episode 30, and we are out.
Out.